Hello everyone, it's your favorite student in space here, and it's no secret that the amazing digital circus is incredibly popular with people, and I am no exception as I love the heck out of this show. But I have noticed I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of theories about it. They're not all bad, they're just all pretty much just boiled down to 99% of them are either character is secretly evil, or more commonly, this character will abstract next, or first, or whatever. And overall, it's okay, but I do feel like there's definitely some missing theories we should be having right now. Specifically, though, I do have one. One is that I think I know how the digital circus works. I think I've learned bits of inconsistencies within how the show operates that reveal at least my opinion, the real idea and power behind the circus itself, and what Kane doesn't want them to know, assuming even he knows. Anyway, let's get into it. Now, what do I mean by inconsistencies? Well, I'm going to give the ones that maybe really start thinking about this idea. One, and the most obvious I think to many people, is Jax's tail. More specifically, the lack and their appearance of. As for the entire show, he's never had a tail. Until episode 5, where he mentions having a tail, in which Pomni points out that he doesn't have a tail. And then Jax turns around and sees he doesn't have a tail. Now, that's all fine and dandy. Jax just had a misconception, kind of weird about himself, but whatever. But then in episode 6, he just has a tail. No one points this out, but in the universe, but he just has a tail. How? Now, to be fair, the creators did in the concept have the idea of a detachable tail that he could take on and off, but Jax doesn't act like that in episode 5. He doesn't say, oh, my tail must have came off, or oh, I left my tail somewhere, or anything like that. Or it doesn't even say to Pomni, oh, anything like that. He acts like he truly believed his tail was always there, and then it just wasn't, and that confused the heck out of him. But then in episode 6, it's just there. That's a bit odd, isn't it? Was it some kind of glitch that maybe Kane just left in? Maybe. But when you start looking at other details, things get a bit more interesting. Mainly, and my next major detail of odd inconsistencies is in fact Kinger. Now, there's a lot we're going to talk about Kinger, but we'll start with basics. It's been, generally speaking, Kinger's crazy. Obviously he's not entirely crazy, but he's definitely not all there mentally. Unless he's in the dark. This is clearly foreshadowed in episode 1 and 2, directly stated in episode 3, and consistently followed out throughout the other episodes. If it's at night or in dark places, Kingo is more stable and mentally there. But this isn't consistent. Now, granted, Kingo is written to be kind of comically crazy, so naturally he's not always perfectly consistent, but especially after episode 3, he starts having moments where he's clearly more sane or more together than even in bright sunlight. I would mainly point out in episode 5, during the President Pomni scene, and episode 6, with the whole shooting out scenes. Now, granted, King of these moments does switch between crazy, again, but he also has moments of clearly put-togetherness, and they're too frequent and consistent to just not be worth noting. There's definitely something odd about that I don't think has quite been figured out. And then we have one with Kane, where, now granted, this is not quite as definitive, but I think it's something interesting, is how, at the start of the circus, he has complete and utter control over all the scenarios and everything about them, but then later on, he gets less and less control of the situation, and has less power over his own simulations. Now, granted, part of this is clearly a personal thing, but also, now, some people say, oh, he's just trying to be nice to the people there, because he does somewhat try to make them happy, and I would agree, but there's also clearly points where he just will not do things people want him to do that would make people a lot more happy. As characters have pretty consistently pointed out, like Pomni and Zooble, they would just prefer to have nice, calm adventures, and he just refuses to do that. But he relents more and more, first to suggestion ideas, then to, well, actually before that there was the Spudsy adventure, and then in episode 6 he just completely gives up and just lets them all have guns and shoot each other. This is odd, isn't it? I mean, he clearly has a lot of control. Why not just force them to do what he wants? He didn't have much of a problem with that in episode 1, 2, and 3, but yet he just seems to slowly start having issues doing with that, and he's clearly not happy about it. That is odd, isn't it? But then we have another thing. Is Kinger, once again, as he comes back to this, he created the butterfly. How did he do this? He literally just says he just made it up. I know a lot of people use this as a point to the idea that, oh, he created the digital circus or helped program it, so he knows this stuff. But I don't think that makes any sense, because if that was the case in this context, why would he just not say that, or just make obvious mentions to, actually just think about that. Why would he not just say, oh, I know how to do it, or I knew this, or anything like that? Instead, he says, I just made it up. Like, he just made it up. Now, granted, if you want to be, you can say, oh, he's trying to be clever, hinting the idea he programmed the digital circus. But Kingo isn't someone who would do that. Kingo has really we have no reason to believe Kingo is the kind of character who would playfully hint information like this. He's not like a Grunkle Stan type of character, or if he is, he's much better at hiding it. Now, granted, this all could depend on future reveals, but that does seem iffy to me. But even this, all of that put together, just made me suspicious. Things were odd. But there was one thing that makes no sense no matter how I try to think of it. And that being episode 6 and guns, mainly that they operate extremely weirdly. Now, there's the first obvious bit of funny information is how just because Ragatha put her finger in the gun hole was able to blow the shot back at Jax. Now, granted, this is a funny haha cartoon moment, but why would it do that? I mean, granted, there's some level of silly physics to the digital circus, but they don't usually manifest in such obviously Looney Tunes level shenanigans. They usually stem from the fact that characters are 90s to early 2000s video game characters, or have bodies that can't really be properly destroyed. That kind of like Looney Tunes, I did that, doesn't usually happen. Especially since the guns are designed to be somewhat realistic. But that's not even the major one, although it is extremely odd. You also get how Pomni was able to shoot the can, but when Jax told her to lose up, she obviously shot it better and was less nervous, except for the fact that same shot made the can, which the first time didn't even move really, this time it blew it across the screen. That doesn't make sense. I don't think anyone's pointed this out, but that's not how guns and bullets work. The bullet would not care how shaky you are holding it. As long as it hit the target, it should hit for about the same amount of force. Maybe some variables, of course, but not enough to go from barely moves the can to sends it flying. That's just not how physics work. And once again, the physics engine in Major League Circus is questionable, but why would it give a single F about whether Pomni was thinking like a cartoon character at the time, or thinking to just loosen up? Why would that matter to it? It shouldn't, but yet it did? And this gets even more blatant at the middle end of it, where Pomni, because just randomly shoots, and because I guess she's confident in it, it causes the bullet to do a comical levels of ricochet, and just manage to completely take out Zooble. They do weapons like that, which shouldn't work. Like, it really shouldn't work like that. There's no amount of loosening up or just letting things go and being confident that would allow you to pull that off. That is pure nonsense. And even if I'm not even saying, oh, the force of the bullet would wear off. No, I mean, like, how would she have known to have shot there? Like, this is, like, literally, she's not a supercomputer. She doesn't have, like, Batman or Cyclops level or secondary ricochet skills to pull that kind of BS off. But yet she did. She did do that. But how? That's not a thing. And then it all made one last thing that finally made me realize this is the character doing it. Is sharp teeth. Now that might sound kind of silly. After all, for the entirety of the digital circus, pretty much, Jax is the only one showing me sharp teeth when he opens his mouth, which is obviously some kind of visual gag type thing. Except Pomni, because in episode 1, when she was going a bit crazy, her teeth turned sharp, even though we see normally they're flat or more normal looking. Now, most people assume this was a thing that when someone goes crazy, like, she's going crazy, it's like a sign of insanity, like, yeah, I think. But then when she's acting chaotic evil in episode 6, she also has sharp teeth. Now, most people I've seen vaguely mention it have mentioned it like, oh, maybe it's just because she's acting like that, it causes that to happen, but why? Why would her digital body care if she was feeling chaotic evil? And most people just assume it was an automatic response type thing. Like, this is just something that happens. But then Pomni, towards the end, literally points at her mouth and says, I thought we're being chaotic evil, and her teeth go sharp. meaning that she has some ability to control it. But how? This is not like, is this a play feature type thing? Like, is this a gimmick like Zooble and Gangle have? But yet, it's never mentioned. It's never brought up. In fact, Zooble goes out of her way to mention that they are the only two with major gimmicks. But yet, Pomni can shoot well and change her teeth structure. Jax maybe as well, but since I don't know if we've ever seen his mouth open but not pointy teeth, I'm not sure. Ragatha apparently can do cartoon faces, and then Kinger can just make items? How? How does all this make sense? All these different things are just random. They aren't glitches, at least not technically. So what's the deal? How all these things play together? Well, I think I figured it out. I think I know the secret of the digital circus. The secret that makes all these things add up and explains everything about what's going on. The digital circus is powered by belief. Now, what do I mean by the digital circus is powered by belief? Well, it is my theory that the circus itself, its rules and what is in it, is powered by what the characters in it believe is possible. Specifically speaking, what the humans believe is possible. So AIs like Kang or Gummy Goo wouldn't fall into this. So how does that exactly work? Well, I can't be entirely sure because I'm not, once again, this is a theory and I don't have enough evidence to fully be able to break it down. But I think how it works is that if a character believes something to be possible, it becomes possible. If they don't believe it's possible, then it either has a harder time existing, can't be as powerful, or Distrib can't exist. The more members of the circus believe or disbelieve in something, the more true it becomes. So for example, if half the cast believes something can happen in the digital circus, it becomes more probable than if just one thing's impossible. This is not entirely concrete, or at least I'm not entirely sure the concrete proof about that, but I have some evidence to explain it. Let's go over actually some of them. Jax's tail, we'll start with it. Now, at the start, before episode 5, only Jax thought he had a tail. Everyone else either saw his body or just assumed he didn't have one. This means that 5 out of 6 members assumed he didn't have a tail. Then, when Jax mentions to Pomni that he has a tail, meaning that he has given Pomni the idea he has a tail, then in episode 6, boom, he has a tail, meaning that 2 people think he has a tail, so he starts having a tail again. This could be, now this might sound a bit iffy, but I want to go over some more examples I think might help explain this further. Pomni's gun skills. Pomni's gun skills can be translated in this game because she believes she can do it, or it can happen. This is basically what Jax is telling her, just not really without realizing it. Pomni didn't believe she could shoot well or shoot her friends or just do anything like that. But yet, the second Jax tells her to loosen up and just do it, all of a sudden, not only does her aim get better, her shots pack more punch. And we can see her actively focusing when she did the Zooble shot, meaning that she was actively putting effort, trying to, and then believing on someone she could pull off that shot, which she then did, showing that Pomni's skill with a gun and potentially Jax's ability to reinforce it, as well as the other characters believing the guns can do this kind of stuff, lets that shot happen. Kinger's ability to create butterflies is simply put, he's the most insane. But this insanity is so tailored that he effectively believes almost anything can happen. And this belief is so strong, it gives him the ability to do this. I also suspect that the butterfly healing item might be an in-game item that already existed, and King more summoned it rather than created it. But that's total speculation on my part, so And we get to Kane, of how he slowly seems to be losing control over the circus. Mainly, we started with Zooble. Zooble was the only one out of the main 5, 6-ish who really believed that they could just turn down an adventure. This probably didn't affect King too much, but notice how he didn't, or would rarely try to force Zooble on them. Would just kind of let it slide. But then, starting around episode 4, we get more, first Kane's mental breakdown a little bit in episode 3, but also around episode 4, the characters convince him to let them do the fast food adventure. And then after that, he agrees to the suggestion box, and after 6, he just gives them all guns. This means that after around episode 4, the characters started to believe they could control the adventures, or they had more influence over them. Basically tying Kane's hand. He had less control over his own simulations, meaning that on some level he was struggling to do it. Now, I do believe that Kane is sentient in this case. I don't think, or sentient as AI can be in this case. I don't think he's totally bereaved to the will of belief. So, like, he can still disagree with something going on, but might still have little control to directly stop it. He can't really go against his programming. But then, this can also explain but how does that explain the other thing? How does that explain Kinger's weird darkness thing and Ragus's ability to blow the gun back at Jax? Well, I think it comes down to what Jax said about archetypes. Now, a lot of people have either pointed out that Jax was completely wrong in his assessment of a character, or act like he was completely right. And the thing is, he was kind of both. Now, I don't think Jax has some kind of inside knowledge of how the circus works, because I think he would explain it a little bit better. But I think he was unknowingly stumbling onto something. You see, the digital circus is powered by belief, as previously mentioned. If we assume this theory to be true, the more characters believe something to be true, then the more true or harder to resist it becomes. This is how the archetypes come in. The characters in Digital Circus, especially everyone but Pomni, clearly try to present a certain archetypal personality, some more intentionally than others. Jax is intentionally trying to be the funny one / annoying Bugs Bunny type, where other characters kind of just fall into them. This belief that every character slowly has slowly not forced them into a role, but has kind of boxed them in, or at the very least has heavily encouraged them into certain patterns of behavior. Ragatha is super nice and never mean, Zooble is grumpy, Gangle is sad, especially without her mask, Kinger is crazy, and Jax is funny / annoying. These characters effectively reinforce their own belief, both based on their personal issues and beliefs that were kind of locking them into these archetypes, but also they were enforcing it to everyone else. A lot of these are masked anyway, but since the characters don't know any different, they help reinforce it. By reinforcing it, it forced them into these archetypal roles a little bit more. Pomni showing up, and just character development overall, has slowly broke these. Now, part of this is just the characters got more depth as more episodes go on, of course, but I think part of it is that their archetypes are breaking down, so they are much more obviously showing off their humanity. So you get characters who can, of course, much more act. This is why Kinger is less incompetent in the Bright now, because his archetype of insanity or crazy became less strong after Pomni had a heart-to-heart with him in episode 3. This slowly, but especially because Pomni definitely probably told at least some people about it, slowly changed the belief around Kinger, as well as helped his personal issues. This is why he is more competent in the brain later episodes, because simply put, it's partially broke down the belief that Kinger was just crazy, allowing him to be more himself. Now, this also helps explain why Jax had the weird gun blowback on him, because he builds himself as this funny Looney Tunes Bugs Bunny type character. So when Ragatha does something that would happen in a Bugs Bunny skit, oh look, that happens, because Jax has built himself up archetypally as the funny bunny one. So when someone does something that would be funny and cartoony, it happens to him. This is a per example how it's not always what you want to happen that can be powered by belief. Because Jax has made everyone believe he's an annoying Bugs Bunny type, he starts being subject to some of the rules of those characters. And this might also explain how he has the keys to everyone's room, but I'm not entirely certain of that. He might just stole them. But all this comes down to, though, how does this all come together into the true purpose of the digital circus? If it's powered by belief, then what's it trying to do? I'm not the first person to suggest this idea, but I think this is really what's going on. I think the digital circus is a prison or a trap in some variety, specifically designed to contain those within it. And I think and I don't even know if it's digital, as in, I'm not entirely sure how digital the digital circus is. This may sound crazy. I mean, it clearly operates on some game logic, and Pomni got in there with a VR headset, which is true, but is that only true because characters believe they're in a digital simulation? It's worth remembering that Kinger is the first one there. and the oldest one there, and he's a programmer. His wife probably was also fairly knowledgeable in computers given her husband's occupation. So, if they got trapped here in a variety, they would likely be someone more likely to assume it was some kind of digital construct, which may have influenced the entire nature of how the circus appears going forward. Then, any other characters who would come in later would continue to be reinforced by this message. King would say, "Oh, we're in a digital realm." Kane would say the same thing because that's the belief of the realm, and therefore it would become a thing. Now, this does also question how Pomni ended up with the VR headset, because that doesn't sound explicitly digital, but this is another thing, her story doesn't also make sense if you think about it too long. Like, she went to an abandoned building, found a VR headset, put it on, and then it just took her here. Like, knowing the whole how her soul or mind got trapped here, what's a VR headset doing in an abandoned building like this? Like, no, really, okay? King has been here for decades, and if I had to guess based on technology, in fact that King explicitly does not know what the internet is, it means this has to be at the latest the 90s and potentially earlier. But VR technology wasn't really there yet, especially anything Pomni would have recognized. So, and also, why would an abandoned building still have power? Even if we assume that the digital circuit is more of a portal type thing, what's powering the computer she did this on? It doesn't make any sense. And also, you get another thing, when none of the other characters say, "Oh yeah, I put on the headset too." Nobody says that. Isn't that kind of odd? Like, you think they would be, someone else say, "Man, I wish I never put on that damn headset." But no, they just don't acknowledge that, implying that, at least to me, that they were taken other ways. Which would go a while to suggest that it's not just one computer screen with a VR headset sitting somewhere that people keep accidentally putting on and then getting sucked into the digital realm, but rather it's a much more widespread force that simply takes on the appearances of what makes sense. It could also be that the true force or King or whatever has simply started to use digital means to capture people because to keep up the thing. For after all, if someone were to be taken in with a magic book, that would probably give away that the circus isn't entirely digital. But why capture them? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what and the reason why they would be captured precisely. Perhaps they have this ability to alter reality on someone in the real world. Perhaps it's some kind of karmic punishment. I'm not entirely sure, to be truthful. But what I do know is the adventures are designed to, or at least suspect, that the adventures are designed to keep the characters from realizing they can control the simulation. Now, how does it make sense? Well, think about it like this, okay? If, let's say, the characters didn't have adventures, they just hanged out in the main circus and lobby, right? That would be kind of boring, but also relatively peaceful. This would be peaceful, relatively calm, and give the characters time to start poking at their world. Maybe not intentionally, but since everything will be calm enough, if sooner or later somebody would realize that if they believe something can happen, it will occur. Therefore, the characters could then either A, try to come up with an escape plan using this knowledge, or B, at least significantly change the place to be something more to their liking. And the Kane, or whoever made the realm, doesn't want that. But if they were in constant adventures all the time, constantly in danger, then their characters would be desperately searching for some kind of way out, even more so than usual. So anything that they could give them an edge over the simulation, they would immediately take. So constant adventures, bad idea as well. But this, going forward, where characters have a peaceful area to mostly exist, and then adventures keeps them on their toes, but doesn't make them so desperate that they'll try anything to get out. It keeps them at a nice bit of complacency. Isn't that about right? Overall, though, I can't say who or what truly made the digital circus. I don't think it's Kane. I think he's as much of a puppet to the belief as anyone else, just one that's more sentient to it all. And there's a lot of other details I may have messed up or things, and I'd love to speculate over what the simulation actually is. I've heard purgatory and hell theories are pretty common, obviously. A part of me has noted some similarities to the Fae stories, alien abduction is possible, but I doubt it. Overall, I'm just not entirely sure. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. This is honestly one of my favorite theories I've come up with in a while. And overall, I would just love to hear some thoughts on it, especially as episodes come forward. I'm curious if I'll be proven right or dead wrong. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed me. Dislike and tell me why I'm stupid below if you didn't. And I will see you all next time.